And one other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse. We spend more money per pupil by 3 times than any other nation, and yet we're absolutely at the bottom. We're one of the worst. So you can't do worse. We're going to end education coming out of Washington, D.C. We're going to close it up, all those buildings all over the place, and you have people that in many cases hate our children. We're going to send it all back to the states. Thank you very much.
And on the education department, why nominate Linda McMahon to be the education department secretary if you're going to get rid of the education department?
Because I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job. I want her to put herself out of a job, education department. So we're ranked number 40 out of 40 schools, right? We're ranked number 1 in cost per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. And we're ranked at the bottom of the list. We're ranked very badly. And what I want to do is let the states run schools. I believe strongly in school choice. But in addition to that, I want the states to run schools. And I want Linda to put herself out of a job.
Do you think that's something you can do with an executive order, or are you going to ask Congress to do it?
I would like to be able to. Look, if I could give the schools back to Iowa and Idaho and Indiana and all these places that run properly, there's many of them. I think.
You saw from the intro, Trump is planning to suspend dozens in the education department as Doge devised plan to dismantle the agency. Now, I don't remember the full cost. I remember saying something like $800 billion is spent on the Department of Education to keep it up front and floating. Trump wants to make it more to the states. You know, that's been Trump's always go-to solution. As per usual, you know, Democrats are crying over it because, you know, this is where a lot of these activists get their money from. And I just want to put up one example of these activists screaming on the streets, right? This is Christopher Rufo, who's been a big critic of the Department of Education. He believes the Department of Education is controlled by many ideologues. They are, right? Especially if you look at the Department of Education, majority of their people support Democrats. They vote Democrat. This is a Democratic institution. And you wonder why student loan forgiveness is the top of the Biden's list. And speaking of student loan forgiveness, student loan debt blossomed under Biden despite loan forgiveness. Outstanding federal student debt reached $1.6 trillion in 2024, a marked increase from $1.59 trillion when Biden took office. Why is that? Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Because end of the day, interest can work for you or it can work against you. And many people had this belief that Biden would be able to forgive student loans. So instead of paying their loans, they waited. And guess what happened when you wait to pay off your loan? Interest increase. And this is the kind of the incentive structure that I think many conservatives understand and tries to relate to liberals, to Democrats, to people on the left, people who don't see it our way. We try to relate this, hey, incentives. Show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. If you forgive irresponsible people, you embolden irresponsible behavior. This is the case. And the proof's in the pudding. Look at the outcomes. And that's all I've been asking people to do on my channel is to look at the outcomes. Why should we respect a system where we're ranked last in nations, but we rank first in cost? We pay more money in our education just to be last. Something has to change. She's not wrong. Their war against Elon's effort to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse because their entire professional activist apparatus is dependent upon waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer funds. Losing access to that cash flow is an existential threat. I tend to agree. So before we continue, and this is one of the reasons why people voted for Trump. Democrats crying day and night, oh, we didn't vote for Elon Musk. Technically you did. The minute you heard Doge, this is the funny part about Democrats. They mocked Doge. They made fun of Doge. They said, oh, what is this Doge? Now it's here, down there crying. Dozens of employees at the U.S. Department of Education was placed on leave after refusing to adhere to President Trump's executive order banning DEI programs in federal government. You see, this is what I'm talking about, ideological capture. This is what I'm talking about. An institution that's 90% plus donates to Democrats, vote for Democrats, are Democrats, they're of course they're going to struggle against Trump's agenda. And then when they get consequences for disobeying the executive order, they want to cry victim on the streets. At least 55 Department of Education Department employees received an email Friday notifying them that they were being placed on paid leave, effective immediately. Per to Trump's executive order, those placed on leave have lost access to their government emails and were told not to report to the office. While the exact reason for the paid leave are unknown, most of the affected workers appear to have been taking a voluntary diversity training seminar offered by the department, expelling the Department of Education. Meanwhile, according to the Wall Street Journal, Trump's administration officials are weighing an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. Please do it. With Doge head Elon Musk leading the charge as part of his plan to shrink the government. And one cool thing that Elon is doing is that he's hiring a bunch of engineers to do it. But before I continue on this story, I want to give you guys a snippet of Vivek Ramaswamy, because he was the first one to bring up this idea of dismantling the Department of Education. And he's going to kind of iterate the same things that he said, that Trump said in the beginning of this video. But I like to hear his kind of solutions, because I think this is one of the reasons why he's going for governor, is that he sees what's coming with Trump and he wants to be able to show a model that actually fits more in line with his vision. Let's take a look.
How do you fail at that spectacular level? Because we're failing our children and all the talent God put in every one of them.
It's because we've abandoned meritocracy and a culture of achievement in favor of this culture of victimhood in our country, Sean. And I think that's the number one thing we're going to have to reject to save our country, is that culture of victimhood. How do we restore merit? I'll tell you this. First is, of course, universal school choice. And conservatives like you and I have been pushing for this for a long time. States like Texas are doing great. I think states like Ohio have done well, but can go further. But here's a step that we haven't taken yet that we need to, which is also improving our public schools through merit-based pay for teachers and for administrators. If students are doing a great job, those teachers and those administrators deserve to be paid more than they are now. But those who are failing our kids shouldn't be able to just sit there and keep collecting their paychecks. That's what we need, is to light a fire under the feet of that system. You got DeepSeek coming this way from China. You got students in China and other countries, in many cases lapping our own students right here at home in areas like science and math, and in some cases even in English proficiency. That's just unacceptable to me. But we're not going to sit around and just talk about it anymore, Sean. President Trump's doing a great job. Shut down the Department of Education and give that money back to the states. But after that, it's going to take creative governors who are going to have creative solutions, not just copying yesterday's models, but implementing merit-based pay, actually taking on universal school choice to the next level, including homeschooling freedom. That's how we're going to set our kids free.
And this is why many people, such as myself, believe that the Department of Education should be dismantled. Look at all the money, right? We spend we spend the most on education, yet we're last. Why is that? Look at non-teaching staff increase, 138%, teaching staff 60%, students plus 8. But look where most of the money went to: administrators, growth in staffing. Look at this stuff. And all we're saying is, hey, look, we're allocating resources ineffectively, right? And then you got people out here trying to defend this stuff, right? Here's Randy Washington, right? Because this is the lady, she's famous. She's part of these teachers unions. Randy accused Trump of taking teachers' salaries and giving them to billionaires by cutting the Department of Education. Teachers are paid through local and state funding, not federal. Randy Wintergarten, also makes over $500,000 a year. The average of the teacher is less than that. She's an administrator. She's a glorified administrator. She's not the ground level affecting the outcomes and the educational or intellectual development of our children, but she's getting paid $500,000. But then she's complaining that there's not enough money to pay teachers. How about you take a salary cut, Miss Randy Weingarten? Sorry. This is the hypocrisy I'm talking about. It's the same thing that's going on in Chicago right now. Brandon Johnson is aligned with the teachers unions in Chicago, right? Because he was a former teacher in Chicago. And he's putting Chicago in debt just to be able to continue paying all his passion projects, I like to call them, including the teachers union that he used to be associated with, that he has not stepped down from his board. He's on leave. Obvious conflict of interest. But this is the money laundering motive that many conservatives accuse progressives of doing. Like I said, they don't want to solve problems, they just want to manage problems. 76% of American kids are educated in the public school / government school system. So they disproportionately affects the educational outcomes of of children in America. And this is what they choose to spend their money on. They're choosing to find an administration who don't want people to be based on their race, but based on their merits. They think racism is, it's systematic racism. It's not systematic racism. It's systematic behavior. And what controls systematic behavior? Your culture. If you grow up in a 2-parent household, the odds of you being more successful academically are higher than people born in a single-parent household. That's due to behaviors. You're more likely to be read to. You're more like your parents have more time to actually teach you stuff passively. Depending on how much books you have in the house also affects academic outcomes. All these things that have nothing to do with race gives you an advantage in the academic world. Asian students are known to spend more time doing homework than any other race of people. Are you surprised why they achieve so much academically? But instead of looking at these factors, these social factors that come from your culture, that comes from your family, they're worrying about how much money we're spending, even though we're spending the most money out of any country in our education system. This is the same problem that the Democrats have. They do not want to look at themselves, but I digress. I think I went on a little mini rant. Let's finish the segment.
Where's the money going? Who's taking it? Are they trying to take that money that kids get for tax cuts for billionaires? What's going on? That's why we have to see what they're doing. It is illegal to take that money out of children's mouths and give it to billionaires.
And one thing I hate about these teachers unions, that they do not stand for the interests of our children, yet they love to use our children as pawns and shields to defend their corrupt interest. You're getting paid $500,000 a year. And if Trump takes this away, you might have to cut your salary. There's a financial interest in you maintaining the system. A system whose outcomes is not working for American parents and American students. Yet you're saying, we're fighting so hard for the students, the children. Get out of my face. You don't represent the interests of my children. You represent the interest of yourselves, of your teachers, and of a union. This is the kind of accusation we make about union bosses. Unions only benefit the union boss because the union boss can control a large swath of people and he can leverage that to enrich themselves. And that's what she's doing here.
Are there areas you think that could be improved or streamlined?
Oh, my God. My members, remember, Al Shanker actually didn't want a Department of Education. He wanted it to stay, one of my predecessors, he wanted to stay within Health and Human Services, HEW, because he thought it was more important to have the whole child focused on. So, of course, there are ways to fix the bureaucracy. Of course, there are ways to make things better. I mean, Elizabeth Warren just found millions of dollars of savings that could happen if people work together. But my point is this, and you just said it. States and localities run education. That's where 90% of the funding for education goes. They already run it. They should run it.
Okay, then I see. Then it seems like you're in agreement with Trump. Dismantle the Department of Education. You only lose 10% of your money. So what you're crying about? Because the Department of Education kind of like creates the curriculum that the states follow in a way. These people are just mad that they're losing their gravy train here. Right? And I made a video talking about how this is a gravy train for a lot of Democrats. Democrats panic after their horrifying money laundering scheme was revealed. Right? And it doesn't help that Elon's getting a bunch of young engineers to investigate how the government works. There's no way you hiding that from them. And they're screaming bloody murder. Why? Because their interest is being attacked. You want me to defend the current system and leave it alone when it's giving us outcomes like this. New national score makes undeniable case for school choice. Right? According to the NAEP results provided by the National Report Card, 69% of fourth graders and 70% of eighth graders aren't proficient at reading. That's only 3 out of 10 school children learning to read soundly. When students can't read at grade level, it significantly hinders their other academic learnings. Who's most affected by this? Right? Democrats care about, oh, we care about black people, all this stuff. Black people are more likely to be in public school. Black people fall behind academically. But you see nothing wrong with how we're doing things. Vivek Ramaswamy, Trump, they want to change the incentives. Okay, we want to incentivize good teachers to give good outcomes. We don't want to incentivize an environment where people can half-ass the development, the intellectual development of our children and still get paid a comfortable, safe job where you don't work 3 months out of the year. If like this is the problem many parents sees it as. Like you providing a service and I'm looking at the outcomes of the service and you want to get mad when parents like myself who can afford to, thank God, to homeschool our children. I said, nah, I'd rather homeschool my children. I don't want my kids to be here. Instead of changing the processes, if they'll reevaluate, oh yes, we could save money, we could, but more spending more money on the problem isn't the solution. That's one thing that is glaringly clear right now. Don't even get us started on math. Math scores similar confirm that a change of course in the K-12 education is desperately needed. And this is what people voted for Trump for. He's willing to do this. He's willing to hurt these Democrats' feelings. Because, and let me ask you something. You think Democrats have an incentive structure to actually change the way the education system is run? No, they don't. The Department of Education was ran by majority Democrats, 90% Democrat, 90% plus Democrat was running the Department of Education. You think they was going to do any hard changes that needed to be done in the Department of Education? Hell no. And I think many Americans knew this. That's why they put a Republican in office. And it's starting to see 61% of fourth graders and 72% of eighth graders aren't proficient in math. As a nation, we can no longer justify restricting children to these failing schools for their education. This is one of the reasons why many people like me are in favor of school choice. Nor can the ever increasing astronomical spending well over $850 billion annually. So imagine if you're able to cut into that. People say it's impossible to save $1 trillion from the government. It's impossible until it happens. It's impossible for Donald Trump to win. He lost already. There's no way his political future is over until it happens. You don't think this will help? Cutting $850 billion annually? You see why it looks like Elon Musk wants to dismantle the Department of Education. That's more than the Pentagon. Progressives will agree with us to dismantle the Pentagon, make it more like cut money out of the Pentagon. But when it comes to this, they don't want to touch it. I wonder why. On the public health education system continues to support the status quo. Change is urgently needed, and that change will require competition. And as Andy Posner, Trump's nomination for U.S. ambassador to the European Union, recently explained, competition is the only thing that increases quality and decreases price. It is the basic of free market, which is long overdue in the K-12 education in the United States of America. Yes, the way the education system is ran, and the stats already prove this. When private schools are opened up around areas around the public school, the quality and the quality of the education goes up in public schools. Public schools need competition because the teachers feel safe. You saw from my clip with Vivek Ramaswamy, he points out how he wants merit-based pay because right now there's no incentives for good teachers to actually do a good job. If a good teacher's out here busting her butt, making sure that these kids get school supplies, teaching them things outside of the box that's not required in the curriculum, she's not going to get rewarded for that. They're not going to get rewarded for that. So what they do, you incentivize them to conform. Okay, I'm just going to cruise. Okay, I'm just going to teach them what's in the curriculum, and that's it. Whether they learn or they don't learn, I'm getting paid. I'm getting a safe check. I'm getting paid. The teachers are not invested in the outcomes of the children, whether they do good or bad on the school. Now, the school may be invested in it. Oh, look, we failed the FCAT. We're a D school now. We're going to lose federal funding because they're trying to artificially create competition. But there's stories of teachers not able, there's stories of teachers, it's hard to fire a teacher. Teacher just get moved to another school. They spend a month on some type of probation period where they still get paid. Their pay tier is based on tenure, not on ability, not on performance. These kind of things, you can make changes to the system, but the teachers unions don't like that. This is why I said the teacher unions do not represent the interests of the American parent or child, only themselves. Because think about it. You want a cushy job where it's hard to fire you, regardless of the output, regardless of the test scores, you're still gonna get a paycheck. You always demanding to get paid more, but the administrators are taking up all the money, but they don't want to cut anyone in the administration, but you're complaining about the teachers not getting paid enough. After the US already pays the most money in education. As an American parent, I'm like, nah, you gotta cut it down. Obviously, you don't know how to use the money. Cut the money budget down. Cut out of the administration. If you want to pay teachers more, reallocate the resources. No, just spend more money. That's the teachers union solution because they want to keep everyone pockets richer. But this is the outcome we're getting. For $850 billion, we're the worst education. We have the worst education system in the world, or one of the worst. How does that make sense? It doesn't. It's like paying premium dollar for a bad service, for crappy service. People ain't gonna come back to that. No one's gonna use those services again. And I think the more Americans are aware of this, the more support people are going to have for this dismantling of the Department of Education. Before the Department of Education, we had the #1 education system in the world in the 70s. Then Jimmy Carter created it. Shocking, a Democrat. Created the Department of Education. And at 2008, we were like 24, we were the 24th education system out of 40 in 2008. And we only got worse from there. And Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to preserve something that's not working. Democrats sit here trying to talk about they're the change candidate. They're here for change. No, you're not. You're here to defend status quo because you're the party of bureaucracy. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your thoughts about Donald Trump thinking about dismantling the Department of Education? It was a campaign promise, which I showed earlier in the video. Let me know your thoughts about the test scores, the outcomes, and do you agree that we should dismantle the Department of Education? Do you believe we should reform it? Do you think it still can be saved? Or you agree with the Democrats and you think that more money is the solution to the problems that we're facing in this nation? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video if you feel so inclined, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.